The shelter mornings were always the same. Soft footsteps along polished floors. The quiet hum of lights. Gentle voices drifting between kennels as volunteers moved through their routines. Dogs stirred, stretched, watched. Some wagged at everyone. Some stayed curled in the corners of their beds, waiting patiently for a moment that felt like it belonged to them. Then the front door opened. A child stepped inside with an adult, moving slowly, almost cautiously, as if the room itself deserved respect. The shelter air changed, not loudly, not suddenly, but in a way that was felt more than heard. A few dogs lifted their heads. A few tails thumped against metal doors. Smiles appeared on familiar staff faces. But one dog did something different. In the third kennel down, a quiet shelter dog rose to his feet. He didn't bark. He didn't jump. He didn't press against the bars like the others. Instead, his body softened. His ears tilted forward. And then, just once, his tail began to wag. Not fast. Not wildly. Just enough to notice. The child stopped walking. Staff members exchanged small, knowing glances. They had never seen this dog wag like that before, not for visitors, not for volunteers, not even for treats. He had always been gentle, always calm, but never expressive. The child stepped closer. The dog didn't move away. His eyes stayed locked on the child's face, focused and peaceful, as if he recognized something no one else could see. The room felt quieter somehow. Warmer. No one rushed. No one spoke. Because whatever the dog sensed in that moment, whatever connection was forming through that slow, careful wag, had a meaning no one expected. And the truth behind his actions was more beautiful than anyone imagined. The shelter woke up slowly. Not all at once, but in small, gentle moments. The hum of the lights came first. Soft footsteps followed, rubber soles moving across clean floors. A cart rolled by quietly, metal wheels whispering instead of rattling. Morning always arrived this way here. Calm. Predictable. Kind. Sunlight slipped through the high windows, settling into warm rectangles along the hallway. Dust floated lazily in the air, catching the light like tiny sparks. The building smelled faintly of soap, clean blankets, and something comforting like home after rain. Kennels lined both sides of the corridor. Inside them, dogs stirred. Some stood up right away, tails tapping eagerly against metal doors. Others stretched slowly, blinking the sleep from their eyes. A few remained curled in their beds, watching the world wake up without rushing to greet it. Volunteers moved gently as they worked. "Good morning, buddy," one whispered, kneeling to refill a water bowl. Another paused to scratch behind a floppy ear. The dogs knew these voices. They trusted them. And then there was him. In the third kennel down on the left, a medium-sized shelter dog lay quietly on a neatly folded blanket. His coat was a soft mix of warm browns and cream, touched with darker markings along his back. His eyes, deep, thoughtful, observant, followed everything without asking for attention. This dog rarely barked. He didn't jump at the door. Didn't spin in circles when footsteps passed. Didn't press his nose against the bars hoping for a hand. He simply watched. Staff members often smiled when they passed him. "He's such a gentle soul," one of them once said softly. Quiet. Patient. But they also noticed something else. His tail almost never wagged. Not for treats. Not for toys. Not even when volunteers sat beside his kennel and spoke to him in the warmest voices they had. It wasn't sadness. It was something deeper. Something thoughtful. As if he was waiting, but no one knew for what. The morning routine continued. Clipboards were checked. Blankets were straightened. Soft music played somewhere near the front desk, barely loud enough to notice. Then the front door opened. A small chime rang out, gentle and polite. Everyone heard it. A few dogs perked up immediately. Tails thumped faster. Noses pressed closer to kennel doors. Footsteps entered the lobby. But these steps were different. They were slower. Careful. A child had come in. Not running. Not pulling ahead. Just walking quietly beside an adult, hands tucked close, eyes moving thoughtfully around the room. The shelter seemed to pause. Staff members glanced up with warm smiles. "Good morning," someone said softly. The child nodded in response. And then, something shifted. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But enough to be felt. In the third kennel down the hallway, the quiet dog lifted his head. His ears tilted forward. His body rose from the blanket, slow and deliberate. No rush. No excitement spilling over. Just awareness. He stepped closer to the front of the kennel. And for the first time since anyone could remember, his tail moved. Not fast. Not wide. Just a small, steady wag like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. The child stopped walking. The adult paused too, noticing the sudden stillness around them. Shelter staff exchanged quick glances. Had he ever done that before? One volunteer leaned slightly closer, eyes widening just a bit. "He's wagging," she whispered. The dog didn't look at the staff. Didn't look at the adult. His eyes were locked on the child. Focused. Calm. Intent. The child took one small step closer to the kennel. The dog didn't retreat. His tail continued its slow, purposeful motion. Back and forth, steady, certain. No barking. No jumping. Just presence. The child's shoulders relaxed. They crouched down slowly, as if instinctively matching the dog's quiet energy. Fingers rested lightly on their knees. Their gaze met his through the metal bars. For a moment, nothing happened. And somehow, everything happened. The hallway felt warmer. The soft music at the front desk seemed to fade into the background. Even the other dogs grew quieter, as if sensing that this moment belonged to someone else. One staff member smiled without realizing it. Another placed a hand over her heart. "This is new," someone murmured. The dog leaned forward just a little more. His tail never stopped wagging. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't chance. It was recognition. Whatever the dog sensed in that child, whatever connection was forming in that quiet space, had meaning. And no one there could yet imagine how deeply that small, gentle wag was about to change everything. The staff had learned his rhythms over time. Not because he demanded attention, but because he never did. Every morning, he woke before the lights came on. Not standing. Not pacing. Just lifting his head, and watching. He listened carefully as the shelter came to life. The familiar sounds never startled him. Doors opening. Footsteps passing. The soft voices of volunteers greeting dogs by name. All of it seemed to settle into him like a quiet song he already knew. They didn't know much about his past. Only pieces. He'd been found sitting calmly near an empty playground late one evening. No leash. No collar. No sign of distress. Just waiting patiently near a bench that faced the swings. When animal control approached, he hadn't run. He stood. Looked back once, and then followed. At the shelter, he adjusted easily. Too easily, some thought. He didn't cry at night. Didn't paw at the doors. Didn't panic when lights went out. Instead, he curled up neatly on his blanket. Chin resting on his paws. Eyes open just enough to stay aware. Staff members tried everything. They offered treats by hand. He accepted them politely, but without excitement. They squeaked toys, rolled balls, laughed softly. He watched. He tilted his head. But his tail stayed still. "He's sweet," one volunteer said once, scratching behind his ears. "Just thoughtful." Another nodded. "Like he's listening to something we can't hear." They learned quickly that he preferred calm. He flinched at sudden noise. turn away from loud laughter, but lean gently into quiet company. When volunteers sat beside his kennel without asking anything of him, he would inch closer. When someone spoke softly, he'd hold their gaze steady and present. Still, his tail never wagged. Not once. Some dogs wore their hearts on the outside. This one kept his carefully tucked away. "He's waiting for the right reason," an older staff member said one afternoon. "You'll see." But days turned into weeks. Visitors came and went. Families paused at his kennel, smiled, and moved on. Children waved. Adults whispered about how calm he was, how well behaved. He never reacted. Not because he didn't care, but because he was listening. And then, that morning happened. The staff couldn't stop thinking about it. All day long, the image stayed with them. That slow wag. That focused gaze. "That wasn't random," a volunteer said quietly while restocking blankets. "No way." Another nodded. "I've never seen him do that. Not even close." They watched him carefully after the child left. Back in his kennel, he returned to his usual calm. He lay down again, head resting on his paws. But something had changed. His eyes followed the hallway more closely now. His ears lifted at softer sounds, as if something inside him had been gently awakened. The next day, the shelter opened as usual. Morning routines. Quiet greetings. Warm sunlight. The staff exchanged knowing looks. "Do you think?" someone asked. They didn't finish the sentence. They didn't need to. The front door chimed. Footsteps entered. The same slow pace. The same careful rhythm. The dog's head lifted instantly. Before anyone else noticed, before a single volunteer spoke, he was already standing. This time, there was no hesitation. His tail began to wag. Again. Slow. Intentional. Certain. The child stepped inside. And just like before, everything else faded. The dog moved to the front of the kennel, posture relaxed, eyes soft but alert. No barking. No jumping. Just waiting. The child noticed immediately. They smiled, just a little, and crouched down again. The staff froze. This wasn't coincidence. "This is his person," someone whispered. The dog leaned closer to the bars, tail keeping that steady rhythm. His body language spoke clearly: comfort, recognition, trust. One volunteer knelt nearby, careful not to interrupt. "Hi there," she said softly to the child. "He doesn't usually wag like that." The child glanced up. "He's quiet," they said. Their voice was gentle, almost thoughtful. The volunteer smiled. "So is he." The dog's tail wagged a little more. Not faster. Just fuller. The volunteer felt a warmth spread through her chest. This wasn't excitement. It was connection. They didn't rush anything. They never did with him. Instead, they let the moment stretch. The child sat quietly. The dog stayed close. The space between them felt intentional, like a shared understanding neither needed to explain. Staff members watched from a distance. Some smiled softly. Some wiped at their eyes without realizing it. Because they knew something now. This dog, the one who never wagged, had been waiting. Not for noise. Not for chaos. Not for attention. But for someone who moved through the world the way he did. Slowly. Gently. With care. And whatever he sensed in that child, whatever invisible language they shared, was only just beginning to reveal itself. The child's name was Eli. Most people learned that later, after the connection had already spoken for itself. At first, all anyone noticed was how carefully Eli moved through the shelter. Not shy. Not afraid. Just aware. As if every sound mattered. as if every space deserved respect. Eli didn't rush ahead like most children did. Didn't pull at sleeves or point excitedly from kennel to kennel. Instead, Eli walked slowly beside his aunt, shoes barely scuffing the floor. His eyes moved thoughtfully, taking everything in: the dogs, the volunteers, the sunlight stretching across the hallway. When they stopped, it was never sudden. Eli paused first. Then turned. Then stepped closer. His aunt noticed it too. "You like dogs?" she asked softly. Eli nodded. "They're quiet when they listen," he said. She smiled at that, though she wasn't entirely sure what he meant. They reached the third kennel. And Eli stopped. Not because someone told him to. Not because a sign caught his attention. But because something inside him did. The dog was already there. Standing calmly. Tail moving in that slow, steady way. Eli crouched down again, just as he had before. His movements were careful, almost practiced. He didn't press close to the bars. Didn't reach out right away. He waited. The dog leaned forward. Their eyes met. Eli felt it immediately, the quiet warmth that spread through his chest. The kind that didn't need words. The kind that felt familiar, even if you couldn't explain why. "He's not loud," Eli whispered. The dog's tail wagged once, then again. A volunteer nearby heard him. "He likes you," she said softly. Eli shook his head. "He's just listening," he replied. The words landed gently in the room. Eli had always been this way. At school, teachers said he was observant. Thoughtful. Sometimes lost in his own world. He didn't talk much unless he felt safe. He noticed things other kids didn't: how lights buzzed, how rooms echoed, how emotions changed the air. Dogs made sense to him. They didn't rush him. Didn't interrupt. Didn't ask him to be louder than he was. At home, Eli often sat quietly near the window, watching birds gather on the fence. He remembered how his breathing slowed when something calm was nearby. This dog felt like that. The dog lowered himself to the floor inside the kennel, mirroring Eli's crouched position. Their faces were level now, separated only by the bars. Neither moved. Neither needed to. Eli's aunt watched from a few steps back. She noticed how relaxed Eli looked, how his shoulders dropped, how his hands rested calmly in his lap. "This one's special," she said softly to a staff member. The staff member nodded. "He is." Eli reached out slowly, fingers stopping just short of the metal bars. "Can I say hi?" he asked. "Of course," the volunteer replied. Eli spoke softly, not to the dog, but near him. "Hi," he said. The dog's ears relaxed. His tail wagged again. Eli smiled. Not wide. Not loud. Just enough. That smile stayed with the staff long after Eli and his aunt left the shelter that day. It lingered in the quiet spaces. In the way the dog returned to his blanket, I still watching the hallway. Waiting. Because now, he wasn't just listening anymore. He was hoping. By the third visit, no one questioned it anymore. The moment the front door chimed, the dog knew. His head lifted before footsteps reached the hallway. His ears angled toward the sound he had learned to recognize. And his tail, always still for everyone else, began its slow, steady motion. The staff watched in quiet amazement. "He feels him," one volunteer whispered. Eli entered just as he always did. No rush. No sudden movement. He slipped his jacket off carefully and folded it over his arm. His eyes searched the hallway, not hurried, just certain. When he saw the dog, he stopped. The dog was already there. Waiting. They stayed like that for a moment. Looking at each other. Sharing something that didn't need explanation. Eli walked closer and sat cross-legged on the floor outside the kennel. He didn't speak at first. He didn't have to. The dog mirrored him again, lowering himself gently, body relaxed, eyes soft. His breathing slowed to match the rhythm of the child in front of him. The shelter around them faded. Even the other dogs seemed quieter, less restless. As if they understood this was a different kind of moment. Eli reached out and rested his fingers lightly against the bars. The dog leaned forward until his nose hovered just a breath away. Not touching. Just close enough. A volunteer approached quietly, kneeling beside Eli. "He's been here a while," she said gently. "He doesn't usually do this." Eli nodded, eyes never leaving the dog. "He waits," Eli said. "So do I." The volunteer felt her chest tighten. "How long have you been waiting?" she asked. Eli thought for a moment. "A long time," he replied. The dog's tail wagged once, slow, steady. The volunteer glanced at the chart clipped to the kennel. "This is Milo," she said softly. Eli smiled at the name. "Hi, Milo." Milo's ears lifted just slightly. Something passed between them, recognition, perhaps. Or understanding. The kind that doesn't come from shared history, but from shared quiet. Over the next few visits, the routine became familiar. Eli sat. Milo waited. They watched each other breathe. Sometimes Eli talked quietly about school, about birds he'd seen, about how loud the world felt some days. Milo listened with his whole body. When Eli paused, Milo's tail wagged. Not fast. Just enough. The staff allowed the moments to stretch. They didn't interrupt. Didn't rush. One afternoon, a volunteer asked, "Would you like to meet him outside the kennel?" Eli's eyes widened just a little. Milo stood. The door opened slowly. Milo stepped out. He didn't pull. Didn't rush. He walked straight to Eli and sat down in front of him, tail wagging gently, eye steady. Eli didn't flinch. He reached out and rested his hand on Milo's shoulder. Warm fur. Steady heartbeat. Milo leaned into the touch. The room felt fuller somehow. As if something that had been missing had found its place. It didn't take long for everyone to see it. Not because it was loud. Not because it demanded attention. But because it was consistent. Every time Eli came in, Milo changed. The staff began to notice the pattern in small ways at first. Milo stood sooner when footsteps entered the building. His ears lifted toward the front desk instead of the hallway behind him. His eyes searched, not anxiously, not desperately, but with quiet expectation. And when it wasn't Eli, nothing happened. The tail stayed still. The posture remained calm. The waiting returned. "He knows," one volunteer said softly as she watched from the doorway. "He always knows." They started timing it. The chime at the front door rang. 2 seconds passed. Milo stood. Every single time. Even before Eli appeared in the hallway. "He's sensing him," another staff member whispered. "Not seeing. Sensing." They spoke in hushed voices now when Eli was around. Not because they were told to, but because it felt right. Like lowering your voice in a place that mattered. Milo walked differently with Eli nearby. Slower. More grounded. When Eli sat, Milo sat. When Eli paused, Milo waited. They mirrored each other in ways that felt intentional, almost practiced, though no one had taught them how. One afternoon, a new volunteer noticed it too. "Why does he wag only for that kid?" she asked quietly. A senior staff member smiled. "Because that kid doesn't ask anything of him," she replied. "He just shows up." Eli showed up every visit. Sometimes he talked. Sometimes he didn't. Some days, he sat cross-legged and told Milo about the quiet corner of the school library where he liked to read. Other days, he just rested his hand on Milo's fur and breathed. Milo listened. Not with his ears, with his whole body. The staff noticed something else too. Milo slept better on days Eli visited. He curled up more deeply into his blanket. His breathing slowed sooner. His body looked settled, as if something inside him had been soothed. One evening, after closing, a volunteer lingered by Milo's kennel. "You're different now," she said softly. He opened one eye. His tail tapped the blanket once. She smiled. "It's okay to be happy," she whispered. Milo closed his eyes again. Waiting. Because now, he wasn't waiting alone. The turning point didn't arrive with a decision. It arrived with a pause. One quiet afternoon, Eli came in later than usual. The shelter was calm, almost drowsy. Sunlight leaned low through the windows, stretching shadows across the floor like long, soft ribbons. Milo noticed the difference immediately. He stood when the door chimed, then waited. Minutes passed. His tail slowed. Then stilled. He didn't lie back down. He stayed standing, watchful, patient. A volunteer noticed and knelt beside his kennel. "He's running late today," she said gently, as if Milo could understand. Milo's ears flicked. He stayed where he was. When Eli finally appeared in the hallway, his steps were even quieter than usual. His shoulders were a little tighter. His gaze stayed low, focused on the floor until he reached Milo's kennel. Milo's tail began to wag again. Not faster. Not bigger. Just relieved. Eli sat down, but this time he didn't speak right away. He rested his back against the wall and hugged his knees close to his chest. Milo stepped forward and sat across from him. The space between them felt heavier somehow. Different. A volunteer hovered nearby, unsure whether to interrupt. Eli spoke first. "Today was loud," he said softly. Milo's ears lowered just slightly. Eli took a breath. "They moved my seat," he continued. It was closer to the door. Milo leaned forward. "I didn't like it," Eli admitted. "But I didn't know how to say that." His voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. Milo shifted closer, his body angling toward Eli in a way the staff hadn't seen before. He wasn't just sitting with him now. He was guarding the space. The volunteer felt her throat tighten. "Would it help to take him out for a walk?" she asked carefully. Eli looked up. "With Milo?" he asked. She nodded. "If you'd like." Eli thought for a moment. Then nodded too. The leash was clipped on gently. Milo stood, calm, ready. They walked slowly out to the small enclosed yard behind the shelter. The air was warm, carrying the scent of grass and late afternoon sun. Eli sat on the bench. Milo lay at his feet. They stayed like that. No rush. No expectations. Just breathing. Eli rested his hand on Milo's back, fingers moving slowly through the fur. Milo's breathing deepened, sinking with the rise and fall of the child's chest. Something inside Eli loosened. "I like it when you're quiet," he whispered. Milo's tail thumped once against the ground. That was when Eli's aunt noticed it too. Not just the connection, but the change. Eli's shoulders were lower. His breathing slower. His eyes softer. "He's calmer," she said quietly to the volunteer beside her. The volunteer nodded. So was Milo. That evening, paperwork was brought out. Not adoption forms. Not yet. But questions were asked. Schedules discussed. Possibilities considered. What if, someone said softly, this is what they both need? The shelter closed that night with a sense of quiet anticipation. And Milo slept deeper than he ever had before. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It came gently, in pieces, through quiet conversations and careful listening. It started with a question. A volunteer sat with Eli's aunt near the front desk one afternoon, hands folded around a warm paper cup. "Can I ask something?" she said softly. "About Eli?" Eli's aunt nodded. "He's always been sensitive," she said. "Sounds. Crowds. Sudden changes. She smiled faintly. He feels everything deeply. The volunteer glanced down the hallway toward Milo's kennel. He responds to that, she said. So does Milo. Eli's aunt hesitated for a moment. Then she spoke. When Eli was younger, she said quietly, there was a dog. She paused. A very calm dog. Old. Gentle. He used to lie beside Eli when things felt too loud. When the world felt too big. Her voice softened. That dog passed away last year. The volunteer didn't interrupt. After that, Eli's aunt continued, Eli stopped reaching out much. He didn't want something new. He just wanted something familiar. She looked up. When he met Milo, it was like he recognized the feeling before he recognized the dog. The volunteer's eyes filled. Across the shelter, Milo stood at the front of his kennel. Waiting. Later that week, the shelter director reviewed Milo's intake notes again. Slowly. Carefully. The quiet dog found near the playground. The bench facing the swings. The calm waiting. A detail stood out, one that hadn't meant much before. He'd been found there every afternoon, at the same time. As if he was waiting for someone who used to come. A child-sized jacket had been found nearby. No one ever claimed it. The director closed the file and sat back. Some dogs wait because they're abandoned. Others wait because they remember. And Milo waited because stillness felt safe. Just like it did for Eli. That afternoon, Eli sat beside Milo in the yard again. Sunlight filtered through tree branches overhead. The air felt warm but light, like the day was holding its breath. Why do you wag for me? Eli asked suddenly. The question wasn't sad. Just curious. Milo looked up at him. Eli thought for a moment. I think you like quiet, he said. So do I. Milo's tail wagged. Slow. Steady. The volunteer nearby smiled. That's it, she thought. Not magic. Not coincidence. Recognition. Two souls who didn't need noise to feel connected. Two hearts that understood stillness. Eli rested his forehead gently against Milo's shoulder. I don't feel loud with you, he whispered. Milo didn't move. He didn't need to. That was the truth behind the wag. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't preference. It was relief. The decision was never rushed. No one wanted to break the quiet that had formed so naturally between them. The shelter took its time. Eli took his time. And Milo had already decided. It was a calm Saturday morning when everything settled into place. The shelter felt different that day, lighter somehow. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warmer than usual, resting gently on the floor. Eli sat beside Milo one last time inside the shelter. Not because it was an ending, but because it mattered. Milo lay close, his body pressed softly against Eli's leg. His breathing was slow. Content. His tail rested still now, not because the feeling was gone, but because it no longer needed to move. Eli's aunt knelt nearby, paperwork resting on her knee. You ready? She asked quietly. Eli didn't answer right away. He ran his fingers slowly through Milo's fur. Warm. Familiar. Steady. I think he's been ready for a long time, Eli said. Milo's ears twitched. The staff gathered without crowding. They stood at a respectful distance, smiles soft, eyes bright. This doesn't happen often, one volunteer whispered. This kind of match. The shelter director opened the kennel door. Milo stood. He didn't hesitate. Didn't look back. He walked straight to Eli and sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Eli smiled. Not small this time. Not careful. Just calm. The leash was clipped on gently. Eli held it, not tightly, not nervously. Just enough to feel the connection. As they walked toward the front door, something unexpected happened. Milo's tail began to wag. Not slow this time. Not measured. But full. Warm. Certain. The staff noticed immediately. Gasps. Soft laughter. Hands over hearts. That's the happiest I've ever seen him, someone whispered. Eli paused at the door and looked back. Thank you for taking care of him, he said. A volunteer wiped her eyes. Thank you, she replied, for understanding him. The door opened. Fresh air poured in. Outside, the world waited, not loud, not overwhelming. Just open. Milo stepped out first. Eli followed. They walked together toward the car, the leash relaxed between them. Milo glanced back once, as if acknowledging the place that had kept him safe, then looked forward again. Where he belonged now. At home, life unfolded gently. Milo found his favorite spot by the window. Eli found comfort in routine shared. Morning light. Quiet walks. Evenings curled together on the couch. When the world felt too loud, Milo leaned closer. When Milo grew restless, Eli noticed before anyone else did. They learned each other without effort. No commands. No pressure. Just presence. Weeks passed. Then months. The shelter staff received updates, photos of Milo sleeping peacefully at Eli's feet. Short notes written in careful handwriting. He waits by my door now. He likes the backyard when it's quiet. He wags every morning. One afternoon, Eli returned to the shelter. Not to visit Milo, but to say hello. He walked in confidently this time, Milo at his side. The dog's tail wagged freely now, no longer reserved, no longer guarded. The staff smiled. Look at you, someone said. You're different. Eli nodded. So is he. They sat together in the lobby for a moment. Milo rested his head on Eli's knee, eyes half closed. Safe. Seen. Home. Sometimes, the most beautiful connections don't arrive loudly. They don't rush in or demand attention. They wait. Quietly. Patiently. Until the right heart walks through the door. And when it does, a single wag is enough to change everything.